The first time my sister called my job pathetic, she did it with a smile on her face and the wine glass in her hand. Like humiliation was just another party trick she had mastered before the rest of us learned how to defend ourselves. She did not say it in private. She said it in front of our parents, 2 aunts, 1 uncle, and a dining table full of people who had spent years treating her confidence like proof of greatness, and my silence like proof of weakness. "I mean, come on," she said, laughing as she leaned back in her chair. "How long is Naomi going to keep pretending that her little office job is some huge career move?" A few people chuckled. My mother tried to hide a smile behind her glass. My father looked down at his plate the way he always did when he did not want to interfere, but also did not want to appear cruel, which, in my experience, was just a quieter version of cruelty. I sat there with my fork in my hand and let the moment settle over me like something familiar, because it was familiar. My sister Vanessa had spent most of our adult lives turning me into a comparison point for her own performance. If she got promoted, I was the cautionary tale. If she bought something expensive, I was the one with small ambitions. If she posted vacation photos, I was the sister still figuring life out. She loved the kind of power that only worked if someone else was placed lower beside it. And in our family, that someone had almost always been me. My name is Claire Bennett. I am 28 years old, and for most of my life, people thought I was the quieter, less impressive daughter. They were wrong. I just never felt the need to announce myself before I was finished building. That dinner happened on a Sunday night in early October at my parents' house in Charlotte. The air outside had just started turning cool, but inside the dining room, everything felt overheated. My mother had cooked too much food, as usual, and Vanessa had arrived dressed like she expected photographers to be waiting in the driveway. Beige heels, silk blouse, gold earrings. Her hair blown out into those expensive waves that looked effortless only because they were not. She worked in corporate marketing for a real estate group and talked about her job the way some people talk about royalty. I, apparently, had a little office job. That was what my family thought. That was the version they had chosen, because it was easier than the truth. The truth was that 3 years earlier, after working in logistics software and supply chain planning long enough to understand where the biggest inefficiencies lived, I started building my own company. At first, it was just me, a borrowed desk, and too many sleepless nights. Then it became a prototype, then a product, then a private client network, then an actual operation. By the time of that dinner, I was no one's employee. I owned the company. But I had never told my family. Not because I was ashamed, because I knew them. If I had announced it too early, every struggle would have become their entertainment. Every delay would have become proof Vanessa was right. Every risk would have been held up as another example of why I was not practical. So I kept it quiet. I worked. I built. I expanded. I let them keep underestimating me because sometimes being overlooked is the cleanest room in which to prepare. Still, even with all that, the comment hit. Not because Vanessa's opinion mattered. Because my mother laughed. That small, approving laugh hurt more than the insult itself. Vanessa took another sip of wine and looked at me. "No offense, Claire. I'm just saying, at some point, people need to stop romanticizing average jobs." I set my fork down carefully. "You seem very interested in my career for someone so successful." That earned a few looks around the table. Vanessa smiled wider. "I'm interested because you're my sister. I care." That was one of her favorite tricks. She would dress contempt as concern, wrap humiliation in polished language, throw a knife, then act shocked when someone noticed the blade. My Aunt Denise jumped in before I could reply. "Vanessa just wants more for you. She's always been ambitious." Yes, I thought. Ambitious about being seen. Not the same thing. But I did not say that. I never wasted good lines on people who would not understand them. Instead, I picked up my water glass and said, "I'm happy with where I am." Vanessa laughed again. That's what people say when they've settled. There it was, that ugly little shift in the room where everyone waits to see if you will defend yourself or quietly accept the role assigned to you. I looked at her for a second longer than usual. Then I smiled. Not warmly, just enough. Maybe, I said. Or maybe some people are too busy working to keep giving speeches about how impressive they are. Silence. It was brief, but I felt it. The tiny pause. The first crack in her rhythm. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not do this tonight." Interesting. He had not said that when she started, only when I answered. My mother set down the serving spoon with a little clatter. "Claire, nobody is attacking you." I almost laughed at that. No one attacks you, according to families like mine, until you start hitting back. Vanessa leaned against her chair and shook her head with fake pity. "You're always so defensive." "No," I said calmly. "I just remember what you say." She opened her mouth to respond, but my mother rushed to smooth it over. "Enough! We are having dinner, not a board meeting." That line nearly made me smile for real, because if she had known how many board meetings I had led that month, she never would have said it so casually. The rest of the dinner moved on, at least on the surface. My father talked about retirement plans. My uncle complained about property taxes. My aunt brought up someone's engagement. Vanessa recovered quickly, as she always did, and returned to performing the version of herself everyone found so polished and impressive. But I noticed something when I watched her that night. She kept glancing at me. Not often, just enough, like she was checking whether the insult had landed properly, whether I was wounded enough, whether she still occupied the higher ground. That was the thing about Vanessa. She did not just like admiration. She needed hierarchy. She needed a room where she could feel above someone. And if life stopped giving her those rooms naturally, she created them. Usually with me. When dinner ended, I helped my mother carry plates into the kitchen because, of course, I did. I had always been the useful one, the one who noticed what needed to be done, the one who stepped in. Vanessa did not clear dishes. Vanessa was discussed while dishes were cleared around her. As I stood at the sink rinsing plates, my mother moved beside me drying silverware. After a minute, she said quietly, "You know how your sister is." I did not look up. Yes. She didn't mean anything by it. That made me finally turn toward her. "Then why does it always sound so pointed?" Mom sighed. "Claire, not everything is about your feelings. There are sentences that explain a whole childhood. That was one of them." I dried my hands slowly and said, "No, usually in this family it's about Vanessa's." She stiffened immediately. "That's unfair." I nodded once. "Sure." Then I walked out of the kitchen before I said something sharper. On the drive home, I did not play music. I drove in silence with both hands on the steering wheel and the city lights sliding past my windows in blurred lines. My apartment was 20 minutes away, and my office was another 10 from there. I almost went home. Instead, I turned toward downtown. My office sat on the 12th floor of a renovated commercial building with dark steel framing and tall glass windows overlooking the street. At night, it looked even better. Cleaner, stronger, quiet in a way that felt earned. The reception lights were dim when I walked in, but the security guard nodded because he knew me. I rode the elevator up, stepped out into the silence of my own company, and stood there for a moment. My company. Mine. Not inherited, not gifted, Not funded by family money or social charm or a last name that opened doors. Built. Every late night, every humiliating doubt, every contract, every failed version, every risk. I walked past the conference rooms, past the operations desks, past the glass wall with our logo, Northline Systems, and into my office. Then I set my bag down and looked out over the city. Vanessa thought I had a pathetic little office job. That part almost amused me. What she did not know, what none of them knew, was that the little office she would have laughed at from the outside belonged to me. And 6 weeks later, after a scandal destroyed her shiny job and stripped away the image she had spent years polishing, my sister would send her resume to my company, asking for an interview. She had no idea whose desk that application would land on, and when she finally found out, it would be far too late to rewrite the way she had treated me when she thought I was beneath her. 6 weeks after that dinner, Vanessa lost her job. Not in the dramatic, satisfying way people imagine when they think about karma. There was no security guard walking her out with a box, no public scandal with cameras, no one-on-one speech from a furious executive ending with, "You're done." Real collapse is usually quieter than that. It starts with rumors, then tense emails, then meetings people stop inviting you to, then careful language, restructuring, internal review, strategic adjustment, words designed to make damage sound respectable. I heard about it on a Tuesday afternoon while I was standing in Conference Room 3 at Northline Systems, reviewing a client expansion rollout with my operations manager and 2 department leads. The meeting had already gone 20 minutes over, and my assistant had slid a sticky note in front of me halfway through. "Call Lena when free. Family drama." I finished the meeting, gave the final approvals, and stepped back into the hall. The office was alive around me in the way I had grown to love. Phones ringing, keyboard noise, low conversations, deadlines moving, decisions being made. Not glamorous, not loud, just real work, done by smart people who respected results more than presentation. I called my cousin Lena as I walked toward my office. She answered immediately. "Have you heard?" "Heard what?" "Oh, come on, Claire, don't do that calm voice. It makes gossip less fun." "What happened?" "Vanessa's company is a mess. Something about numbers being inflated, campaign reporting issues, maybe fake vendor costs. I don't know the exact details, but they're cutting people fast." I slowed my steps. "Was she involved?" "Depends who you ask. Your aunt says absolutely not. My mom says if Aunt Denise is denying it this hard, then Vanessa was at least standing close enough to smell the smoke." That made me smile despite myself. Lena kept going. "Anyway, her whole division's being cleaned out. She's gone." I stopped outside my office door and looked through the glass wall at the skyline beyond. Gone as in suspended? Gone as in unemployed. For a moment, I said nothing. It wasn't pity. It wasn't even satisfaction yet. It was that strange stillness that comes when a thing you predicted long ago finally arrives in real life and turns out to look exactly as you expected. "Claire?" Lena said. "I'm here." "You okay?" "Yes." "You don't sound shocked." "I'm not." Lena laughed softly. That's probably the healthiest reaction in the whole family right now. When I hung up, I went into my office, closed the door, and sat behind my desk. Northline had grown faster than even I had allowed myself to imagine in the early years. We had started with freight and warehouse flow optimization, then expanded into client scheduling systems, back-end logistics dashboards, and distribution forecasting. We now had contracts in 4 states, a staff of 26, and a new hiring plan for the next quarter. I remembered the warehouse space where I had begun with folding tables and secondhand chairs. Now there was glass, steel, a polished reception desk, an executive floor, and teams waiting for my approval on major decisions. Vanessa still thought I had a forgettable office job. I wondered what expression would cross her face if she saw where I actually worked. That evening, my mother called. I knew before answering what the tone would be. Soft, measured, careful in the way people become careful when they are about to ask a favor they have not earned. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. Sweetheart? That was new. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to check in." "About?" A pause. "Your sister?" There it was. I leaned back in my chair. "What about her?" "She's going through a very difficult time." "Yes," I said. "I heard." Mom sighed like she was carrying something noble. People are exaggerating everything. Vanessa did nothing wrong. She was caught in a bad environment. I looked down at the contract notes on my desk and said nothing. "Claire?" "I'm listening." "She may need some help for a little while." "Of course, not accountability, help." "What kind of help?" I asked. "Professional help, guidance, networking. You always were good at office things." I almost laughed. There it was again, office things, as if the company I had built from scratch was just some vague clerical skill she still could not be bothered to understand. "You mean career advice?" "Yes," Mom said quickly, relieved. "Exactly. Maybe look at her resume, mention her to a few people, point her in the right direction. She'd never ask you herself, of course. She has pride." That word sat there between us like a joke. Pride. Vanessa had never lacked pride. She had lacked humility. There was a difference. "And why would she ask me?" I said quietly. "She thinks my career is pathetic." Mom's voice tightened. "Must you drag that up again?" "It was 6 weeks ago." She was joking. No, she was ranking me. Mom went quiet, and I could feel that familiar irritation building on her side of the call. In our family, naming the pattern had always been more offensive than the pattern itself. "Claire," she said at last, "family should help family." I stood up and walked to the window. City lights were starting to appear below, one by one. Interesting, I thought. That rule always shows up late. "It's strange," I said. "That principle never seemed to apply when I needed anything." "That is not fair." "No?" I asked. "When I was struggling to get Northline off the ground, nobody offered help. When I was working 16-hour days, nobody asked what I was building. When Vanessa mocked me in front of everyone, nobody thought family should step in then." Mom's silence told me I had hit the nerve, even if she would never admit it. Finally, she said, colder now, "You always make everything harder than it needs to be." I smiled faintly at the window. "No, Mom. I just stopped making things easy for other people at my own expense." She ended the call 3 minutes later with polite disappointment, which was her preferred method of punishment now that she could no longer manage me with guilt quite as effectively. Sunday dinner happened again that week. My parents never canceled family dinners, no matter what disaster was moving through the house. Routine was how my mother controlled narrative. If everyone still sat at the same table, then everything could still be presented as manageable. Vanessa was already there when I arrived. She looked immaculate, naturally. Cream sweater dress, gold watch, hair perfect, makeup flawless. If you had not known better, you would have thought she had just come from a magazine shoot about women who own vacation property. But the eyes told the truth. They were sharper now, more watchful, too alert. She kissed the air near my cheek when I walked in. "Claire?" "Vanessa?" She pulled back and looked me over. "You're dressed nice. Big day in the office?" There was a bite under it. Still, even now. I smiled. Every day. Dinner began stiffly. My father overcompensated by talking too much. My mother kept refilling glasses like silence was a leak she needed to plug. My Aunt Denise mentioned industry politics 3 separate times, clearly trying to build Vanessa a safe landing in the family storyline. Then, halfway through dinner, Vanessa looked at me and said, "Mom tells me you've been busy." I cut into my chicken. "Usually." "She also says your company's doing fine." Fine. That tiny word almost made me laugh. "Fine enough," I said. Vanessa tilted her head. "That's good. Stability matters, especially when you're not really built for big risk." There it was again. She could be standing in smoke and still reach for the same old weapon. I set down my fork. "And adaptability matters, especially when image stops carrying the whole load." Her smile froze for one heartbeat. Just one. Then she laughed. "Still defensive, I see." "No," I said calmly. "Just precise." Nobody spoke after that, not for a few seconds. It was my father who finally broke the silence by asking for more potatoes, as if carbohydrates might rescue the evening. But the moment stayed with me, because that was when I understood something clearly. Vanessa had learned nothing. Not yet. Losing her job had not humbled her. It had only made her more desperate to find someone she could still feel above. And that meant she was going to make a mistake. She made it 9 days later. I was at my desk on a Thursday morning, reviewing a list of candidates for 2 open client strategy roles, when my HR director sent me a flagged application with one short note attached. "This candidate has strong presentation and branding experience, confident to the point of unusual. Thought you might want to see it before we proceed." I opened the attachment, and there she was, Vanessa Bennett, my sister. Resume polished like crystal. Job titles cleaned to brilliance. Language designed to make every room she had entered sound lucky for having her in it. She had applied for a strategy communications role at Northline. I read it twice. Then I opened the screening email she had sent. It was perfect Vanessa. Smooth, self-assured, slightly condescending without ever crossing into language she could be held accountable for. The tone of a woman who believed she would be an upgrade to any company willing to hire her. But the best part was this. She still had no idea whose company she had just applied to. No idea the pathetic office girl she had mocked over dinner was the person who would decide whether her application moved forward. I sat back in my chair and stared at her resume for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not because I intended to embarrass her, because life had finally arranged the lesson better than I ever could have. I picked up the phone and called HR. "Schedule the interview," I said. And when I hung up, I looked through the glass walls of my office at the company I had built in silence. For years, Vanessa had mistaken volume for power. Soon, she was going to walk into a room that would teach her the difference. The morning of Vanessa's interview, I got to Northline earlier than usual. Not because I was nervous, not because I was unsure of what I was going to do. I arrived early because I wanted the building quiet when I made the decision that would end something old in me for good. There is a different kind of silence inside a company before the workday fully begins. The lights are on, the cleaning crews are gone, coffee machines hum in corners, screens wake up one by one. It feels like standing inside a machine before the first switch is thrown. I walked through reception with my bag over my shoulder and nodded at the front desk before heading upstairs. The glass walls caught the pale morning light. My heels clicked softly across the polished floor. My company looked exactly how I had wanted it to look when it existed only in sketches and late-night plans. Calm, sharp, serious, impossible to dismiss. That thought almost made me smile. Impossible to dismiss, if only my family had known. I went into my office, set down my bag, and stood at the window looking over the city below. Traffic was already thickening. People moved in patterns from this height, all of them heading somewhere that mattered to them. I wondered whether Vanessa had slept the night before. I wondered whether she had rehearsed polished little answers in the mirror. I wondered whether she still imagined herself walking into an ordinary company where charm, styling, and confidence would do half the work for her. At 9:15, my assistant, Erin, knocked and stepped inside with her tablet. "She confirmed," Erin said. "Vanessa Bennett. She arrived early." Of course she did. Erin gave me a small, professional smile. "HR has her in conference too. They did the preliminary round already. Final conversation is yours whenever you're ready." I took the tablet from her and scanned the notes. Strong presenter. Very polished. High confidence. Some concern about tone. Possible difficulty with collaboration. That last line was generous. "Thank you," I said. When she left, I put the tablet down and took one slow breath. Then I picked up Vanessa's resume again. It was a beautifully written document. I will give her that. Every line was arranged to create maximum shine. She had always understood optics. She understood what certain words signaled: leadership, strategy, brand alignment, executive communication, growth vision, cross-functional initiative. What the resume did not show, what resumes almost never show, was character under stress. It did not show how she treated people she believed had less status. It did not show the way she could turn contempt into humor and then call you sensitive for noticing. It did not show the years of family dinners where she built herself taller by measuring me smaller. At 9:30, I stood up and headed for conference 2. When I reached the glass door, I paused for half a second and looked in. Vanessa was sitting at the table in an ivory blazer and black trousers, posture perfect, portfolio placed neatly in front of her. She looked expensive, controlled, interview-ready. Her hair was smooth, her makeup was flawless. Her expression was calm in exactly the way people arrange their faces when they want a room to believe they are entirely unbothered. HR was beside her, finishing some final notes. Then HR stood, gathered her folder, and said, "Our CEO will be joining you now." Vanessa gave a polite smile and turned toward the door. Then she saw me. I do not think I will ever forget that exact second. Recognition came first, then confusion, then the quick, hollow stillness of someone realizing reality has shifted under their feet and they no longer know where to place themselves. "Claire?" she said. I walked in, closed the door behind me, and took the seat across from her. "Yes?" HR moved quietly toward the exit. "I'll leave you two to it." When the door clicked shut, the silence in the room changed. Vanessa stared at me for a moment too long. "What are you doing here?" I folded my hands on the table. "Conducting your final interview." She gave a short laugh that wasn't really a laugh at all. "No, seriously." "I am serious." Her eyes moved across the room, then back to me. She was trying to solve it in reverse, trying to find an explanation that preserved her idea of me. Consultant, maybe. Assistant to leadership. Temporary support. Anything except the obvious. Then I said it plainly. "I'm the founder and CEO of Northline." Her face did not collapse. Vanessa was too trained for that. But something did break. Not outwardly. Inwardly. I saw it in the way her shoulders went even more still, in the way her mouth tightened, in the way she blinked once and then stopped blinking for too long. "You're joking," she said. "I'm not." She looked at the company logo on the wall behind me, then back at me again as though maybe it would rearrange itself into something she preferred. I let the silence sit. People like Vanessa rely on others rushing to rescue discomfort. filling the air, softening the edges, giving them a path back into control. I did not rescue her. Finally, she straightened in her chair. I see. That was the first lie of the conversation. I opened the file in front of me. Would you still like to continue? Vanessa hesitated. It was brief, but it was there. Then she lifted her chin. Of course. So we did. I asked about her previous role. She answered smoothly. I asked how she handled team conflict. She gave a polished answer about communication and strategic clarity. I asked about adapting after organizational failure. That one hit a little harder. She recovered with language about resilience, changing markets, and lessons learned. She sounded good, but not real. Every answer felt lacquered. Every sentence sounded like something she had once heard successful people say and memorized for future use. Then I asked, how do you treat colleagues whose roles seem smaller than yours? Her eyes sharpened immediately. I treat everyone professionally. Professionally, I repeated. Is that the same as respectfully? That landed. She leaned back slightly. I'm not sure what this is about. I'm asking because culture matters here. And what exactly are you implying? I met her gaze. I'm asking whether you can work well in an environment where titles matter less than contribution. Her voice cooled. If this is personal, we should probably stop pretending it's an interview. Interesting. Not an apology, not self-awareness, just irritation that reality was refusing to flatter her. I closed the folder. All right, let's stop pretending. She stared at me, and suddenly, after all those years of family dinners and little public humiliations, the entire truth sat between us without decoration. You called my job pathetic, I said quietly. You mocked me in front of our parents. You reduced my work because you thought it made you look bigger. And now you're sitting in my company asking for a role you assumed would be beneath you. Her jaw tightened. I was joking. No, you were ranking. She looked away first, then back, and for the first time in my life, I watched Vanessa struggle to find language that would not betray her. You never told anyone, she said at last. That I built this company? Yes. You never asked. Her face hardened. So what? You wanted some dramatic reveal? No, I said. I wanted the truth to arrive without me begging anyone to see it. That silenced her. Outside the glass wall, I could see my staff moving through the hallway, carrying laptops, coffee, reports. Their work continued. Meetings were starting. Phones were ringing. The company kept breathing around us like a living thing. Everything she had mocked existed anyway. Everything she had minimized had grown anyway. That was the part I think she hated most. Not just that I had succeeded without needing permission from the people who underestimated me. Finally, Vanessa asked, "Are you hiring me?" There it was, the real question. I held her gaze for a few seconds before answering. No. She inhaled sharply. Because I'm your sister? No. Because you're angry? No. Then why? I answered with complete calm. Because I do not trust how you treat people when you believe they are beneath you. That hurt her. I could see it. Because insult can be dismissed as emotion. Assessment cannot. Her eyes flashed. That's convenient. It's accurate. She stood up too quickly, gathered her portfolio, then stopped as if she had remembered she was supposed to look composed. This is unbelievable, she said. I stood as well. No. What's unbelievable is that you walked in here still assuming I'd be smaller than you. She stared at me, and for 1 second I saw it. The version of her no one in my family ever acknowledged. Not the polished favorite, not the admired daughter, just a woman whose entire identity had been built around being seen as superior, suddenly standing in a room where that illusion could no longer survive. Her voice dropped. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this." I almost smiled. They're welcome to. She left without another word. My mother called that evening, then my father, then my aunt. The story tore through the family exactly as I knew it would. I was called cold, vindictive, petty, cruel. My mother said I had embarrassed my sister when she was already vulnerable. My father said I could have handled it with more grace. My Aunt Denise said families should never mix old tension with professional decisions. I listened to all of it. Then I answered each one the same way. She applied. I interviewed her. I made my decision. No one liked that answer, because plain truth is very difficult to manipulate. 3 days later, Lena sent me a screenshot. Vanessa had deleted the old post where she mocked my pathetic office job. I looked at it for a moment, then locked my phone and went back to work. That was the real ending. Not a screaming fight, not some dramatic collapse. Just this quiet, irreversible fact. The sister who had spent years treating my work like a joke had walked into my company asking for a chance, and I no longer needed anyone in my family to understand what that meant. Because by then, I already did.